everyone, and welcome to the Political Job Interview, where I interview candidates running for election. I'm Vincenzo Calla, your host, and today I take on the role as the boss, giving a job interview to today's candidate, Clarke Kelly. Clarke is running for election for Ottawa City Council as a candidate for Ward 5, West Carleton-March. Thank you, Clarke, for your time, and thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
It's great to have you here today, and without further ado, let's get this job interview started. So as with any good job interview, I'm going to start off with an opportunity to learn more about Clarke. So the first question is, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and your story?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born and raised in a really small community called Crown Point, which is in Woodlawn in the northwest corner of West Carleton-March, which is where I'm running to represent at City Hall. So I was born and raised there. I went to school all the way from nursery school right through to the end of high school in the ward. I grew up in a family that was very, very engaged in the issues of the day at all levels of government. So that dinner time conversation about public policy and what's going on in the news was always part and parcel of our time together as a family. So that's something that comes naturally to me. And having grown up in that ward, I watched my parents and other friends' parents and people from the community really they're the ones who make the community and who put on the programming that we take part in as children, and really provide that support and make the community a place worth living in. And so I watched my parents dedicate a lot of their free time to running youth groups. They started to help start an outdoor hockey league in West Carleton for kids who either didn't want to play indoor organized hockey, were just getting into it, or weren't able to afford it at the time, which was our case. And so that was really fun to watch, and I was really influenced by those experiences as a child and growing up, and that sort of shaped me into the person I am today. And that's someone who cares very deeply about their community and wants to serve it.
Well, that's definitely great. Running for office is no small thing. And, having that experience of living in a community your whole life and experiencing the community makes you much more grounded to the community. You get to know, like, the little shops, the people, the little shortcuts in the places and from street to street. And you really get to have a good sense of that. And running for council, you get to bring that forward, even if it is just the small little tidbits about the shop owner of the convenience store down the street.
Yeah,
So
and those are important, those little tidbits.
they are. And we're going to go into the next question, which is, why have you decided to run for this position?
Well, so as I mentioned, I grew up in a family that was really engaged in politics, and I developed a passion for democracy and the process over the years. I have a degree in political science, and it's something that I've been passionate about for all of my adult life, and actually right into my early childhood. I look around these days and I see a democracy at all levels that I think is in decline. I was really disappointed in the turnout. I believe it's 43% in the last provincial election, and that's after 4 years, two of them in particular during a pandemic, where I think everyone had their opinion, very strong opinions on how things were handled or not handled, or what they would have done differently or like to have seen done differently. And so I was really disappointed to see that less than half of Ontarians went to the polls and watched the election and watched debates and really took part in it. So my goal and my main motivator for running for this office is to get more people involved in those discussions. I think it's really important that we stay engaged with each other, even if we don't agree. We have to keep talking to each other. And I think municipal politics is a really good opportunity, especially here in Ontario, where we don't use a party system in municipal politics. So I'm really excited about the opportunity here at Municipally, that we have a level of government where we can have conversations in the absence of party lines and ideologies. I know that some ideologies will pop up as we discuss the issues, but I think for the most part, we have the opportunity to have more fruitful and productive discussions with each other and with our representatives. I think it's probably the purest form of representation in Canada at the municipal level, where there's no parties involved, because it's just you and I talking. Also, it's the citizens themselves talking with each other. And I've had a lot of really good conversations with people of all political stripes and people right across the spectrum about roads and about things where we don't need to revert to party stances. We don't need to check in with the leader and get approval to say this or that or to vote against the party. I think it's just a much more genuine and authentic relationship that you can develop with each other and with your representative. So that's the number one reason that I wanted to run. The second motivating factor for me, growing up in a rural ward, I love the that rural nature that we drive through every day. Every time I come from town and drive home, my blood pressure, I can feel it dropping as I get closer to home, as I come down Dunrobin Road away from March Road, and nature starts to take more of the landscape in front of you. And I really want to make sure that we don't lose that. I see an issue right now, and it's concerning to me. We're losing on average 300 acres of farmland in Ontario on a daily basis to suburban sprawl. And I know that the people of West Carleton live there for a reason. And if they wanted to live in a really developed area with Walmart, supercenters, and shopping centers on every second corner, that they would live in Canada or Barrhaven or somewhere where they have access to all of that, within walking distance. Whereas I think the people who live in West Carleton live there because of its natural rural beauty. And so that's something that I want to defend. And sustainable development practices will be a focus of mine if I am lucky enough to be elected to represent the people of West Carleton-March. So that's another motivating factor to me, is making sure that we do things right and that we respect the rural nature of Ward 5.
Well, you hit a lot of great points there, and 2 points that come together very nicely as well. You talked about having to, well, as a municipal politics, you have some more of the, I guess you could say, more freedom to think of like what you want to stand on, because like you said, you don't have that party guideline to follow, the party leader that's setting you straight and saying, okay, you must talk about this or that or what the other thing. And especially because you are in a rural riding, your concerns in a rural riding are much different than those of, like you said, Barrhaven or Canada or Orleans or even the urban center. And being able to be a representative one-on-one with them, not having to pledge allegiance to any bigger person or party, is just a great way to really bring those ideas forward. So we're going to go into the next segment now, which is called About the Job, where we're going to take a bit of time to talk about the job and what you bring to it. The first question is, why do you think you are the best candidate for this job?
Well, I believe out of all of the candidates, and the numbers have gone up and down. I think we're at 6 now. One person has dropped out, but regardless, I've had a look at the field. I have the utmost respect for everybody who's put their name on the ballot. I think there's some smart, engaged people to choose from here in Ward 5. But I think out of everybody, I have the most lived experience in Ward 5. So having been born and raised there, I've had the opportunity to connect with families right across the ward, whether it's through sports or engagement in politics or other community initiatives. So I think right away, my lived experience there really, really plays a part in me, hopefully, if I'm elected, being successful and being able to represent everybody in the ward. And so it's not just that. I do, as I said, I've been a keen observer of politics at all 3 levels for most of my life, and I bring a really strong understanding of how democracy works, how politics works, and the work I've done in the past also helps me there, I believe. I did work for the Member of Parliament for Canada Carleton for several years as her legislative assistant on Parliament Hill. And so that gave me the opportunity. And so I should clarify for everyone that the Canada Carleton federally is where Ward 5 would be situated. So I had the opportunity to chat regularly with people from West Carleton-March about what they liked and oftentimes what they didn't like. So it gave me a great opportunity to really connect with people and to see, how a representative, how busy they are and how demanding the job is. So I have a really good understanding of the job and what it's going to take. And so that's, I think, set me up well in this ward to represent the people of Ward 5.
And it's so important having that experience. And we're going to talk about experience next, but just having that experience to work in a place where it's public service, working for an MP is public service. Whether you are the MP or whether you're the legislative assistant or scheduling coordinator or whatever, it's public service and you're serving the public and talking with people regularly. And I'm sure we can have a chat about this for a long time, but we're going to go into the next part, continuing that, which is what experience do you bring to this job?
So, as I've touched on, I think the lived experience in the ward is really important and sort of the broad experiences that I do have. But I'll start with what I think is quite relevant to the community work and being a representative. So I was born into a family business. My dad or still runs a practice. He's an addiction treatment specialist and helps people with their recovery process. And so I was born into that and taking part, in the day-to-day operations of a small family business in the ward. We also had a location in Almont, so that was the full experience from cooking, cleaning, marketing, picking people up at the airport, doing all of the administrative stuff. So that was something that we did as a family. So understanding how the small businesses what struggles they do face, and just having that experience of waking up every day and having to get stuff done in order to keep your business going was a really good experience for me, and that led to some other more community oriented opportunities. So I was on the board of directors for a men's recovery home in Renfrew County called McKay Manor. So this was a place where they did some treatment, but mostly sober living. So it was a great place for people in their recovery process to come and stay. There was programming for them in the community, housing, find job opportunities for them. So I sat on that board for 5 years and helped with many different initiatives through that organization. The one of which I'm most proud of is a project that we did, a poverty reduction project that we did through McKay Manor and other partners in Renfrew County. So I actually wrote the proposal to get the funding, which was about $300,000 of funding from the Ontario Trillium Foundation, and it took 2 tries to do. It was those portals and application processes for funding of that nature can be really, really complicated. And there's a lot of layers to it. You got to make sure that all the details are arranged. Any little detail that's not set can disqualify you from getting the funding needed. So I wrote the proposal and got the funding, and I also helped establish relationships with other organizations in the community that could help refer people to the program. So we set up a network of support for low-income families who were suffering from addiction, mainly tobacco addiction. So that can really take a lot of finances out of people's pockets. So people who are addicted to nicotine often spend upwards of $5,000 a year on tobacco, and that's a huge expense for people who are already in the low income bracket. So it was really, really encouraging to be a part of that and bring people together throughout the community. So we had for-profit, not-for-profit community organizations that were all involved in that project, and it made a really big difference in people's lives. And so I think there's a great example of sort of putting together the big picture and the network and getting consensus in the community, and simultaneously making sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed in the process of submitting that proposal to get the funding. So I think that's a good example of some experience that I would bring to the table. And then also very much more brief than that example, I'll tell you. So just the broad range of experiences that I do have, as I've got the political background and the passion for that, but I've also worked as a cook in the ward. I've worked as a drywaller, If you live in the Carp area in a home that was built in the last 5 years, there's a good chance that I actually helped install and finish the drywall in it. So, I know what it's like to wake up early every day and go to work in the ward. I know what it's like to wake up early every day and drive out of the ward and come back. So I have a really good background of diverse experiences. So I think that helps me identify with a large number of people that live in Ward 5.
Oh, definitely, and especially on your work with the addictions treatment center, it's working in a small business, but also that compassion aspect that's so necessary as somebody who wants to serve your community, especially at City Hall. You're serving a much smaller portion of people than you would be serving, say, if you ran for federal provincial politics. So having that compassion and being a good representative for the people. So the next segment is called About the People, which is part of serving as an elected official is serving the people who elect you. So here are a few questions about how Clarke wants to serve the people. So the first question is, what is something that the people you would like to serve the people of West Carleton-March need that you would like to get done if elected?
Well, so I've spent a couple months talking to people in the ward, and I know something that really matters to them because we are the biggest geographical ward in the city, but we're also the least populated ward. And so oftentimes people feel like that voice of the smaller rural communities are drowned out at the council table because there's 23 other wards this time around, most of which are suburban and urban wards. So it's really important to the people of West Carleton-March that they have somebody at that table who understands the rural issues. And I've been obviously spending my lifetime understanding that, but obviously over the last couple of months, been really digging into the specifics of that. And so the people of West Carleton want the recognition that their ward is different from the urban and suburban wards and that our needs are also different. So investments in roads and infrastructure is really key in our area. No one in our ward has regular access to public transit. So we have to drive to get our groceries, to see our family, to go to the soccer field or the arena. So there really isn't any other options to get around the ward. And so making sure that we get our fair share of investments in roads and infrastructure is really, really important. And I haven't spoke to a single person in the ward who does not want to see West Carleton's rural nature disturbed. So I think there's several aspects to that. I know that we, as the population of Ottawa grows, the need for housing will grow, and that's going to be reflected in Ward 5, West Carleton-March. Obviously, we will have to grow along with the city, and I want to make it very clear to everyone, particularly to those who work in development, that I'm not anti-development. I think developers play a key role in our community in terms of building it and making it a great place, and we need them. So I want to work with them, but I do want to represent the people of Ward 5, and they want to see development done in a smarter way, or what we think is a smarter way, keeping more mature trees up when we develop, making sure there's ample green space and community green space that people can use. And part of that is to support and sustain our farmland. So, you know, it's the people, the landowners and the farmers that take care of the land in Ward 5 that makes it such a beautiful place to live. And so I would like to make it easier for those people. There are a couple issues in the farming community that I think right away are really just simple, cheap, or affordable gestures for them that would make a big difference. So they spoke to me about speeding on the roads and the fact that that puts them in danger when they're out there with their machinery, and people sometimes forget that in the rural area you have to share the road with the farmers because it's really important. So right away I'm going to push for some more signs, like signs on every rural road, to warn people that they do have to remember when they're out there driving that if you come around that corner at 120, you might not be able to stop in time when that combine pulls out onto both lanes of the road at 5 kilometers an hour. And that by doing that, you're putting yourself and everybody else around you in danger. So there's also some issues around severance where farmers and landowners have to go through I think, unnecessarily cumbersome difficult and expensive process just to sever off 1 or 2 acres to build a home for their family, their son or daughter or whoever it is. And I think that's really key in helping people stay on their land and stay connected to it, and keep them interested in farming and owning those properties. Because I don't want to tell anyone to do what to do with their property, but I do want to support them so that they're not tempted to sell it to a developer. Keeping farming sustainable and making sure that it's a good living for people. So just preserving and protecting our farms and supporting our farms is key to that. Getting funding for roads, and developing in a way that respects our ward.
For sure. And being a rural riding, obviously farming is a major aspect of economic growth and development in your ward. And a beneficial and a crucial part of the city and really greater Ontario area of Eastern Ontario aspect of local, fresh, organic, environmentally friendly and sustainable food. And I can think of even one, and I'm pretty sure, I believe it's in your ward. When I go to Costco, I see mushrooms from Carleton Mushrooms in your ward. I believe that they're in your ward. And that's a local business putting up their mushrooms and their produce in stores across the city, and I'm sure across Eastern Ontario.
Yes, we have a really great opportunity, I think. But right now we don't have anywhere in Ward 5 where you can really go and buy food. It's considered a food desert. So yeah, I think that's a great opportunity to work with local farmers. There's a couple people in our area doing really good work. There's one in Carp, at Eldon's Market. They have our Eldon's Cafe right outside of that. They have a market with local fresh fruits and vegetables. And I'd love to see a lot more of that. And I'd love to incentivize and support that local food system in our area for sure.
Definitely. And as we're talking about that, I wanted to go on to the last question, which is what is one accomplishment that you have achieved that demonstrates why you would be a good elected official if the people choose you?
Yeah, so I think the main example that I would use for that I've already mentioned, and that's the poverty reduction work that I did in Renfrew County. I'm just so proud of what we accomplished there and how we supported people in that community. And I would definitely be excited to do that similar work in Ward 5. You know what, I also think it's really important to mention, and I'll use this as the example for this question. So about a decade ago, when I was still in university. Um, and at that point, I decided I wanted to get more people involved. I got involved with a group called Global Vision Canada, which works with youth, particularly university and college students in Canada. They go on trade missions and all kinds of things on behalf of Canada. They go with the officials that are going on trade missions. So it's really interesting. Exposes youth to that world, international business, politics. So I got selected to be the riding ambassador for Canada Carleton through that program. And what I did there was go around to various different schools, post-secondary institutions. I went to West Carleton Secondary School and spoke to a couple of classes. Just that was all about getting people involved in discussions about politics. And that was a fully, multi-partisan effort. So that was creating relationships with liberals, conservatives, New Democrats, Greens, and at multiple levels of government. So I was able to recruit many people into the program, and we went together to the National Youth Caucus held on Parliament Hill. It was a great opportunity to have discussions about the issues that of the time in a bipartisan way. So I think I was able to bring together people of different political backgrounds to have productive conversations, respectful conversations. So I'm really proud of the work I did there. And I think that's exactly the kind of leadership that we need right now, especially after 2 years of the pandemic. I think it was quite divisive. And I think those are the types of experiences that will help me bring people together to talk about some of the local issues so that we can get on the same page, work together locally. And I think if we do that, successfully, we can build on that for some of the more contentious provincial and national issues that we're divided on. So I think that's a good example of how I can help get people talking with each other, even if they don't agree with each other. It's very important that we keep talking.
Definitely, and that is definitely a great accomplishment. Getting youth involved in politics is always something big, as for me, especially as a young person involved in politics. Getting my peers, getting more people involved in politics is just so important. And we'll end on that one for today. So thank you, Clarke, so much for joining me today. It was great having you, and I'm sure the viewers enjoyed hearing what you have to offer to them. Election day is on October 24th, 2022, and if you liked hearing what Clarke had to say and you live in Ward 5, West Carleton-March, you have the opportunity to vote for him on election day. Check with the local election officials for more details. To stay updated, make sure to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at BC Productions 25. Check out my website, VincenzoCalla.com. Make sure to like, subscribe, and choose to get notifications here on YouTube. The Political Job Interview is a VCalla production. So until the next video, I'm Vincenzo Calla, signing out.